America's most notorious crime story, the Ted Bundy case. What if the most dangerous killer in America looked completely ordinary? Not a masked monster. Not a terrifying stranger hiding in the shadows. But a handsome, intelligent, and charming young man who seemed destined for success. A man who could easily gain your trust. A man who smiled, spoke politely, and appeared to have a bright future ahead of him. Yet behind that ordinary face was a dark secret that would shock the entire United States. His name was Ted Bundy, and he would become one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. Born in 1946, Theodore Robert Bundy appeared to live a normal life. He attended school, made friends, and later enrolled in college. As a young adult, he became involved in politics and community activities. Many people who knew him described him as intelligent, charismatic, and well-spoken. He was the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately make a positive impression. Nobody imagined that beneath this carefully crafted image was a dangerous predator capable of committing horrifying crimes. To the outside world, Bundy looked like a man with a promising future. In reality, he was hiding a secret that would eventually make headlines around the world. During the early 1970s, young women began disappearing across several states in the Pacific Northwest. At first, the cases seemed unrelated. Different victims, different locations, and different circumstances made it difficult for investigators to connect the crimes. Families searched desperately for answers while police departments worked independently, often unaware that similar incidents were occurring hundreds of miles away. As the number of disappearances increased, fear began spreading through communities. Parents worried about their daughters, and college campuses became increasingly tense as rumors circulated about a mysterious predator targeting young women. As investigators examined the cases more closely, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Many victims were young women with similar appearances. Witnesses often reported seeing an attractive man approaching women in public places. Sometimes he wore a fake cast on his arm. Other times he used crutches or a sling. He would politely ask strangers for help carrying books, loading items into his vehicle, or performing small favors. The requests seemed harmless. The man appeared injured, trustworthy, and completely normal. People naturally wanted to help someone who seemed to be struggling. That was exactly what made him so dangerous. His greatest weapon was not physical force but his ability to gain trust. As more women vanished, investigators became increasingly concerned. Despite growing evidence that the crimes might be connected, communication between law enforcement agencies remained limited. At the time, police departments in different states rarely shared information efficiently. Important details often stayed within individual investigations, preventing detectives from seeing the bigger picture. This lack of coordination allowed the killer to remain free for years. Meanwhile, fear continued to grow across the country as families waited for answers and communities struggled to understand what was happening. Eventually, detectives began noticing important similarities between multiple cases. Several witnesses remembered seeing a man named Ted near locations connected to disappearances. Others reported seeing a Volkswagen Beetle matching the same description. Again and again, investigators encountered reports of a friendly young man with dark hair who appeared polite and harmless. Nothing about him seemed threatening. In fact, many people described him as charming. Yet the evidence slowly pointed toward one individual. One name kept appearing in reports. That name was Ted Bundy. At first, investigators were skeptical. Bundy did not fit the traditional image of a violent criminal. He was educated, well-dressed, and confident. He volunteered in political campaigns and appeared to be building a successful future. Many people found it difficult to believe that someone like him could be responsible for such horrific crimes. However, evidence continued to grow. Witness statements matched his appearance. His vehicle matched descriptions provided by witnesses. Records placed him near several locations connected to disappearances. Gradually, investigators began focusing their attention on him, and the case against him became stronger. In 1975, Bundy's luck finally started to run out. A police officer stopped him during a routine encounter. What initially seemed like a minor incident quickly raised suspicions. Investigators discovered unusual items inside his vehicle that appeared potentially connected to criminal activity. This discovery gave detectives an opportunity to investigate further. As they dug deeper, more evidence linking Bundy to multiple crimes began to emerge. Witnesses identified him, investigators connected him to several disappearances, and the case against him became increasingly difficult to ignore. Eventually, authorities arrested Ted Bundy. The arrest shocked the American public. Many people struggled to understand how someone who looked so normal could be accused of such terrible crimes. Friends, acquaintances, and even some investigators found it difficult to reconcile Bundy's public image with the allegations against him. Yet as more information emerged, it became clear that his ability to appear trustworthy had helped him avoid suspicion for years. He knew how to manipulate people. He knew how to gain confidence. He knew how to hide in plain sight. But the story was far from over. In one of the most shocking developments in criminal history, Bundy managed to escape from custody while preparing for trial. Taking advantage of access to a courthouse library, he jumped from a second-story window and disappeared into the surrounding area. The escape stunned authorities and immediately triggered a nationwide search. Law enforcement officers searched forests, mountains, and nearby communities while the public closely followed developments through news reports. Eventually, Bundy was captured and returned to custody. Most people assumed his escape attempts were finished. They were wrong. Months later, Bundy escaped again. This time, he carefully planned his escape from jail. Over time, he lost weight, allowing him to squeeze through a hole he had created in the ceiling of his cell. After escaping, he traveled across the country while authorities launched one of the largest manhunts in American history. Newspapers and television stations provided constant updates as citizens followed the search. Bundy became one of America's most wanted fugitives, and law enforcement agencies worked together in an effort to locate him before he could disappear permanently. Eventually, Bundy arrived in Florida, where investigators would later connect him to additional violent crimes. The urgency to capture him increased dramatically. Authorities understood that they were dealing with an extremely dangerous fugitive capable of causing further harm. The search intensified, and officers continued pursuing every possible lead. Finally, in 1978, Bundy's run came to an end. A police officer stopped him during a traffic stop in Florida. After further investigation, authorities confirmed his identity. Ted Bundy had finally been captured once again. This time, there would be no escape. Following his arrest, investigators gathered additional evidence linking him to numerous crimes. Witness testimony strengthened the case, and physical evidence connected him to attacks and murders. The evidence became overwhelming. As details emerged, the trial attracted enormous media attention. Millions of Americans followed every development. Television cameras documented courtroom proceedings, newspapers published daily updates, and the nation watched closely as prosecutors presented evidence against the man who had managed to deceive so many people for so long. Throughout the trial, Bundy often appeared calm and confident. He attempted to represent himself in court and frequently sought media attention. His behavior fascinated observers and added to the public's interest in the case. However, despite his efforts, the evidence continued to mount. Prosecutors presented witness testimony, physical evidence, and investigative findings that painted a devastating picture of his crimes. Eventually, the jury reached its decision. Ted Bundy was found guilty and sentenced to death. For many families of the victims, the verdict brought a measure of justice, although it could never fully heal the pain they had endured. Years later, while awaiting execution, Bundy confessed to numerous murders. His admissions provided investigators with information about crimes that had remained unsolved for years. The confessions shocked the public once again. Even after years of investigation, many people struggled to comprehend the full extent of his crimes. His case became the subject of extensive study by psychologists, criminologists, and law enforcement experts seeking to understand how someone who appeared so ordinary could commit such horrific acts. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in Florida. His death marked the end of one of the most notorious criminal cases in American history. However, the impact of the case continues to this day. The investigation exposed major weaknesses in communication between law enforcement agencies, leading to improvements in information sharing and cooperation across state lines. The case also contributed to advancements in criminal profiling and investigative techniques that continue to influence modern policing. More importantly, the Ted Bundy case served as a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Danger does not always look dangerous. Evil does not always appear frightening. Sometimes it wears a friendly smile. Sometimes it speaks politely. Sometimes it looks completely ordinary. Decades later, the story remains one of the most chilling and disturbing true crime cases ever recorded, a story of deception, manipulation, and hidden darkness that forever changed criminal investigations in America and continues to fascinate people around the world.